friends! We've been talking about plants for quite a long time. Why don't we talk a little bit about animals, right? Because part of this course, as you know, our last kingdom covered for the course is Kingdom Animalia. We've come a long way. So why isn't it a plant or a fungus or a protist? Well, there are a few of those. First of all, well, they're multicellular. That works, right? There are no single-celled animals. If it's single-celled and it behaves like an animal, we chuck it into the protist. But they're heterotrophic. They digest and ingest their food, unlike fungus, who absorbs their nutrition. And at some point, they do move under their own power. Now, one thing that isn't listed here, is it listed here? Hey, it is, because I forgot to go forward. These cells, these eukaryotic cells, do not have cell walls. There you go. So that is very important. That makes them soft and squishy. They're the only lineage with muscle and nerve tissue, although not all do. You don't have alternation of generations with animals. So you don't have to worry about the sporophyte and the gametophyte and all that. And then most species are diploid and their gametes are haploid. So all that stuff you learned in genetics, that works here. We kind of took a back step when we talked a bit about plants. So this is just a basic introduction to some of the terminology when we talk about animals, and the diversity within them. We talk about the symmetry of animals. If we say that, that means like you can divide them and have one part identical to the other. Like for instance, like sponges have no symmetry. These are animals with no symmetry, no plane of symmetry. You can't cut them any way to have one side equal the other. Whereas radial symmetry, you have at least two planes of symmetry. Like a jellyfish, for example, it's like a pie. You can kind of cut it any which way, and one side is always going to equal the other. And then you have bilateral symmetry, where there's just a single plane of symmetry, where you cut right down the middle, and one side equals the other, and face their environment in one direction. Some terms here: you have a top side and a bottom side, the dorsal and ventral, a right and a left. You have anterior and posterior as far as a head and a tail, and you have, not in all animals, but bilaterally symmetric ones, you have cephalization or some sort of a head, sort of a deal. As far as the development here, and again, this is just an overview. You have three germ layers that give rise to tissues and organs in the animal embryo. You have an ectoderm, and this gives rise to the outer surface or outer covering of an animal. You have an endoderm, the innermost germ layer, which is what lines the digestive tube and gives rise to digestive tubes and organs, like liver, pancreas, and lungs, if the animal has that. And then the mesoderm is the middle layer, which gives rise to muscles, like notochord, skeleton, gonads, kidneys, and circulatory system. Animals, because two terms which may not be familiar to you, is dipoblastic and tripoblastic. If you have an ectoderm and an endoderm, we say it's a diploblastic animal. If you have ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm, like all bilaterally symmetrical animals do, you say that they are triploblastic. Some animals have a body cavity and some do not. We refer to this as a coelom. This is where you have oxygen and nutrients circulate, and some animals actually have what we call a hydrostatic skeleton in movement of fluids from one part of the animal to the other for needs of locomotion. If there's no body cavity, we say the animal is acoelomate. If its body cavity is derived from the mesoderm and endoderm, we say pseudocoelomate. And if it has a true coelom, body cavity completely lined with tissue derived from the mesoderm only, we say it is coelomate. Circulatory systems, there's some differences and diversity amongst different groupings of animals. You have some animals that don't have a circulatory system. They don't have a formal means of transporting nutrients from one area to another. They just pretty much absorb nutrients from the surface of their environment, or I should say water and gases. There are some that do. Like for instance, you can, as mentioned, or wait, no, my bad. I got to the next slide. So like with jellies and with planaria, they're able to absorb those that they need, the water and oxygen, carbon dioxide, different gases, directly interfacing with their aquatic environment. An open circulatory system, now this is where you don't have formal veins and arteries that enclose like a system of blood. Instead, you have hemolymph that kind of flows throughout the body of the animal and bathes their different organs in the oxygen and the nutrients. Arthropods are an example of this. Insects, lobsters, crabs, butterflies, what have you. They have an open circulatory system. I mean, they do have, some have like a heart-like structure that's able to kind of pump the hemolymph around the, pulsate through the body of the animal, but there are not formal arteries and veins. And then closed circulatory system is a network of blood vessels where the blood, the liquid carrying those nutrients, is actually enclosed in these veins and arteries and is carried from one cell or from body tissues and cells from the heart to areas where it needs to go. And this is what it is with vertebrates. We have different types of modes of reproduction. I mean, you do have asexual reproduction in some animals, and it just occurs where the offspring can just arrive from one parent and you don't need fertilization to occur. We're kind of finding more and more about parthenogenesis, and we thought it was just restricted to, for lack of a better term, like more simple animals, but we're finding there are some very complex animals that actually can carry this out. Is that you have basically clones of the female by those unfertilized eggs developing into an embryo and then being born or laid or hatched or what have you. And then polyembry is really interesting. You have a fertilized egg, but it splits into a bunch of genetic clones. So they include this in a form of asexual reproduction. Banded armadillos do this. And sexual reproduction is where somehow you have to have an egg, and sometimes that has to be fertilized by a sperm, an egg from the female and then a sperm from the male. Different types of constructs in regards to modes of reproduction. And these are some terms that you should know. A viviparous is where you have a live birth, where the embryo is retained and then in the female's body. So mammals are most, I keep forgetting about, there's a few exceptions, but most mammals are viviparous, whereas oviparous is where the animal lays eggs, like certain snakes do and birds lay eggs. Oviviparous it's really funky. It's like somewhere in between, and you wind up having, like, the eggs are retained inside the body of the female, and then the eggs hatch inside the female, and then essentially, like, the young, like, crawl out. It's kind of funky, but cockroaches are this way. Madagascar cockroaches, you see, it's a shark actually, but so that is oviviparous. Now, we're going to go through these, and we're going to have so many labs as far as for animals. We're going to, we're plants, we kind of went through the 4 plant groupings, the non-vascular, the seedless vascular, the gymnosperms, and the angiosperms. For animals, we're going to go through these by phyla. Obviously, we're not going to cover all of them. And then with phylum Chordata, we're going to cover the major classes of animal diversity. And we will do that over the next few lectures. That is it for now, except for this, just a phylogenetic tree of the different phyla of animals that we'll be discussing. Okay, see you later.